JPC Letters. On planets and planetoids. The ageless wisdom considers asteroids and planetoids the same, and they indicate lesser planetary lives and perhaps training grounds for planetary logi. They are under the influence of the solar logos and have unique influence upon other planets and in the case of Earth upon the lower kingdoms in nature, acting as synthesizing the life of those lower kingdoms when the time comes. We are told also that they play their part as certain functions of the solar glands and have their own evolutionary problems. This paper simply acknowledges the passing of asteroid 2012-14 and of the Russian meteor event. The inner planets are termed the terrestrial planets and includes the asteroid belt, forming the inner part of the solar system as astronomical science sees it. The outer solar system composing the outer planets is made up of the gas giants and some comets, the Kuiper belt and a scattered disk including the planet Eris. It is debatable whether the latter are part of our solar system, but probably it is so as they may form the origin of some of the comets. We might consider the various influences and forces that a planet comes under. The solar wind that conditions the planet's atmosphere according to its requirements hold many mysteries and areas of research. The law of magnetic impulse governs the polarities of an atom or a planet and its impulse to seek out its group and polar opposite, to obtain eventual polar union. There is much to study in this. It's interesting that according to media documentary, Venus is Earth's sister planet or even our evil twin. Venus is also known as the morning or evening star. Science already sees her as a twin to our own planet even if the evil part is seen to be due to the extreme conditions found there. Venus receives light in a triple supply and gives 1/3 to Earth, occultly speaking. According to the secret doctrine, it bears light in both the physical and mystical sense. We know of the light of the soul and the Earth will be impressed by the higher soul of Venus, for in many respects Earth is the personality and Venus the higher self. But what of the physical plane light? It appears that in a way unknown to us Venus distributes light to Earth and perhaps Venus absorbs light and in some form of pranic distribution of light, it reflects to us much indeed. The white cloud cover may have something to do with this in both actual and symbolic form. HPB makes clear that both Neptune and Uranus receive very little light, 390 times and 900 times less than Earth respectively. This is an undeniable indicator that they are both not at all dependent on Sol for light or energy, physical or mystical, as are the other planets. Uranus and Neptune are as one, the kingdom of souls, in contrast to Mercury and Sol being one, and therefore receiving 7 times more light than any other planet, or Venus, being Sol's storehouse and receiving a triple supply, distributing 1/3 to Earth, and thus indicating their true reliance and allegiance to the Sun. Again, the 1/3 distribution to Earth from its Venusian storehouse implies to me that planets focus and distribute light to other planets in a way as yet quite unknown to science. Science needs to rewrite the books on how physical light is distributed and received by the planets. Well, they will at some future time. Venus is ruled by the logos of the 5th ray of concrete mind, though she is also attributed in one reference to the 6th ray at some point. Saturn is ruled by the lord of the 3rd ray. To be called the other sun is a magnificent title for us to ponder. Venus Aphrodite and Mercury Hermes is the hermaphrodite in man, in their conjunction. We might see this as perfect balance, and when one is more predominant, then the duality of the sexes becomes apparent, as they are today. Fighting over Aphrodite's hand in marriage is a good indication as to possible warring in heaven between the 7 brothers and the part Venus would play in their relationship within the solar system. The 7 brothers are of course the 7 logi. Indeed, Prometheus and Hephaestus molded the male and female human being on Earth. Thus Hephaestus was hard-working and molded matter, or clay, into the human form. Venus brought the intellect or spark of mind via the fifth ray and the fifth and third subraces of the third root race. The love of the soul incarnates in man, and thus the two were married and are personified as Lord Lucifer and consequent rebellion in heaven and the molding of the spiritual man on earth. It is highly interesting that according to contemporary science, which is in accordance with the occult books, Venus, unlike Earth, has no carbon cycle. This has many implications worth researching for an interested student, as she is not a dark star but a sacred one. In consideration of the problem of Pluto being regraded from planet status to a planetoid, or as is called today, a dwarf planet. Today, written 14th December 2010, I read an article that reconsiders the wisdom of this astronomical decision. It of course makes no difference to Pluto, yet such human decisions are eventually called into question, inspired by the wisdom of those greater than us. We might consider that Pluto is called by DK a planet, even though some human astronomers and astrologers don't currently consider it such. As all lesser spheres than Pluto are considered planetoids in the ageless wisdom, we could use this as a benchmark. We must account for DK and AAB calling Pluto a planet and not a planetoid. The naming of a planet and of therefore calling a planet is probably not at all arbitrary but one of real occultism, as DK indicates that the name is occultly influenced and determined by those greater than human beings. Human concrete perception is not always accurate, and we must wonder as to the example of the IU demoting Pluto to a dwarf planet or planetoid. A planetoid is clearly a form or body of expression of a lesser logoic life than a planet, as may be an intraplanetary life in training or progress towards assuming full planetary command. For example, DK clearly differentiates between planetoids and planets. He also mentions the lesser planets, which perhaps refers to non-sacred planets, with the greater planets being the sacred. In context, a lesser non-sacred planet is not a dwarf planet as denoted in exoteric astronomy or astrology. It is understood by modern exoteric astronomical science that some dwarf planets are Ceres, Pluto, Haumea, Makemake, and Eris, etc. All planets and planetoids in our system have a direct astrological and therefore energetic effect upon Earth and other planets. In fact, regarding Pluto, DK wrote a thesis on the effect it has on humanity and Earth. But then, exoteric astronomy probably refutes true astrological influence in most all cases. Interestingly, the effect of asteroids are on etheric levels, bringing in a specific level and type of energy for the destruction and furtherance of evolution on any given planet. I think it important to read the Tibetan as thoroughly as possible. My conclusion is that Pluto is most definitely a fully fledged planet, albeit a lesser non-sacred one, but most surely not a planetoid. I am encouraged that some astronomers are questioning the demotion of Pluto to a minor planet, dwarfed by the individualism of modern human minds. I hope that current astrological practitioners come to the same understanding. The intention of the exercise is to become familiar with and understand the Tibetans' classification of planets: sacred, non-sacred, greater, lesser, planetoids and asteroids. If this can be infused into the ethers and minds of contemporary exoteric astronomers, we will be at least serving some useful function in this regard. DK gave the classification, and Pluto is a planet with all lesser bodies, lesser than the standard of Pluto, are planetoids. All lesser spheres, lesser than a full planet, are outposts for intermediate planetary logi, and indeed are vehicles that serves as some extra specific function as part of the solar body. All are graded by consciousness and therefore entail rank and status. No amount of human concrete astronomical wrangling can demote or make lesser any planet. JPC Letters, 15th February, 2013.